For all the ceremony and grandeur, it was in the end the simplest of things that was the most heartbreaking. A single white card bearing one word in Prince Harry's childish writing, Mummy. Perhaps that is Princess Diana's biggest legacy, the children she left behind. Not only her two sons, but the children all over the world, whom she was determined to understand and help.
Diana was a princess to me, like a big mum. And she looked after a lot of people and helped a lot of people.
As Diana's cortege passed through the solemn streets of London, the children watched and wept. But along with the tears were childlike reflections that spoke of a wisdom beyond their years.
She wasn't like a royal person. She was just like one of us.
She would go to children all over the world that needed somebody to love and hug. So she went. She gave them a lovely kiss and a hug and that.
Yeah.
She made them feel special.
And no one else did anything for her, but she always helped loads of different people.
For some, the day was too sad to put into words.
She's just found everything really too much. She really felt she wanted to be here to say her goodbyes, but she's just found the whole day totally emotional.
They choose not to care about what so many focused on, the scandal and the gossip, the divorce and the affairs. To them, what matters most is not what Diana wore on the outside, but what lay in her heart on the inside.
She was really friendly and she helped everyone, and all the people in hospital and children, she helped them.
She liked holding people. She wasn't afraid to hold people and touch them and make them feel special, like ill people.
And of course, they think of the two children who were most important to the princess, William and Harry.
I would hate to lose my mum at that age, and I just wouldn't like it. And I feel really sorry for them.
To the children of England, it is all very simple. She was loved, she is gone, and she will be very, very missed.
She'll always be in my heart, and we'll miss her forever.
She was a favourite of everybody and everyone's going to miss her, and it won't be the same without her.
If you could say anything to Diana, what would you say to her?
That I liked her very much and thank you for all she's done for people.
After her very public funeral, Princess Diana was privately buried with a ring that Dodi Fayed had given her on the night they both died.
Last night at around 10:15, my mother passed on. She was surrounded by her friends and her family and her books and the people and the things that she loved.
For more than a generation, she has been America's unwilling icon. She became the most popular First Lady in history. Her style epitomized an era. Her courage during times of tragedy earned her the admiration of the world. Born Jacqueline Bouvier 64 years ago, she grew up in a privileged family of status in New York. In 1951, the year she graduated from George Washington University, she met a charismatic young senator at a dinner party, John F. Kennedy. But John Davis, Jackie's cousin, who wrote a book about the Kennedys, recalls that at first, Jackie had her doubts.
Oh, you know, he's very charming, but he's so vain. He is always having his hair done specially and puffed up for the cameras. She said he thinks he's going to be president someday.
At just 24, Jackie married the dashing Kennedy, who was 12 years her senior.
How long did you know each other before you were married?
We knew each other about a year.
Where did you go on your honeymoon?
We went to Acapulco, Mexico.
Jackie became a political asset by John's side.
We visited 184 communities, and I think slept in nearly every city in Massachusetts.
After their first child died prematurely, Caroline was born in the winter of 1957. Soon after, they began campaigning as a family.
Pleasure to have you here, and I want you to meet my daughter Caroline and my wife Jackie.
How do you do? I'm glad you had a chance to see something in the Senate.
When he made a run for the presidency in 1960, Kennedy aides feared the public would find Jackie too pretty and too upscale. She proved them all wrong. While Jack won the votes, she won the hearts of America. JFK became the youngest elected president in history. John Jr. was born within weeks, There hadn't been toddlers running around the corridors of the White House for some time. By the time the Kennedys celebrated their first White House Christmas, glamorous Jackie was already making her mark.
She was a whole new, fresh breath of air.
Letitia Baldridge was the Miss Manners of her day and Jackie's social secretary. She says Jackie brought an air of culture and sophistication to the White House.
She brought great musicians and poets and playwrights and everybody to the White House.
In 1962, Jackie totally redecorated America's most famous residence and brought TV cameras inside for a special White House tour.
I feel so strongly that the White House should have as fine a collection of American pictures as possible. It's so important, the setting in which the presidency is presented to the world.
With her own inimitable style, Jackie became America's premier trend-setting First Lady.
There's no question that Mrs. Onassis was probably the greatest fashion icon that ever lived.
2 years ago, I said that, introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting that same sensation as I travel around Texas.
1963 was the year triumph turned to tragedy. First, Jackie's fourth child, Patrick, died 3 days after he was born. Then the profound tragedy in Dallas, the assassin's bullet that changed American history and rocked the world. Though grief-stricken, Jackie maintained her grace and dignity throughout the ordeal, earning her further admiration that would outlive her. In a surprising move, 5 years later, Jackie married again, this time to a man 28 years older, the Greek shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis.
He felt in some ways he'd been tricked into the marriage, which was totally untrue. But in his thinking, the way he worked it out, he should never have married her. And I think Jackie felt the same way too.
When Aristotle died 7 years later, Jackie was an ocean away in New York. She was launching a career in publishing, and of all things, Jackie O became a single working mother.
It was Jackie that let women go to work. When Mrs. Onassis entered the workforce, it signaled to women it was okay to go to work.
But over the last 10 years, friends say that most of all, Jackie cherished her privacy. She liked nothing more than blending in anonymously to enjoy life's simple pleasures. Her cancer had spread. The doctors said they could do no more. On Wednesday, she came home to die here at her residence on New York City's Fifth Avenue. Her children and family rallied to her side.
It's a very difficult time for Jackie and for the family, and I think we all just wish her a great deal of love, and there was a great, very warm feeling of family and love that was in her room this morning.
If there is one thing Jackie Kennedy Onassis has taught her family, friends, and the world, it's how to deal with the loss of a loved one. But no one was prepared for her sudden death last night.
She did it in her own way and on her own terms, and we all feel lucky for that. And now she's in God's hands.
Jackie Kennedy Onassis was a paradox, the most public but very private figure the world has known. She was the closest thing to a queen that America ever had. She's left us now, but her legend will outlive us all. There will never be another Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
This is not a disaster relief site. It's actually temporary housing for the faithful who continue to arrive in droves for a final farewell to John Paul II. With no hotel rooms left anywhere near Rome, and with hundreds of thousands of the faithful pouring into Rome every day, Italian officials are hastily constructing tent cities like this one. It's set up in a field about 30 miles south of Vatican City. As you can see, water supplies make it possible for everyone to keep clean. This tent dweller has a special story to tell. A Polish-born Catholic, he was actually confirmed by John Paul back when the late pontiff was a little-known bishop.
So when he died, you said, I'm going no matter what.
Besides tent cities, living quarters are also being set up in warehouses. And believe it or not, this field, the site of ancient Circus Maximus chariot races, will soon be filled with some of the estimated 5 million visitors to Rome. Many won't get anywhere near St. Peter's. They'll have to watch the funeral on giant video screens like this one under construction. Italian security officials, Agostino Miozzo, insist that everyone will be safe and that the biggest problem is overcrowding.
The capacity of Rome is not unlimited. We are prepared to close the town.
I'm very glad I'm not involved because I think it's going to be very difficult.
Joe Petro is a former Secret Service man who protected the Pope during his 1987 visit to the U.S.
This is a huge logistical nightmare.
According to the rules, only Vatican police can carry weapons in and around St. Peter's, which means Secret Servicemen won't be allowed to carry guns to protect the presidential delegation, which includes the President and First Lady, former Presidents Bush and Clinton, and Secretary of State Rice. Some believe the Vatican will quietly bend the rules on the weapons policy.
They'll get an agreement to bring a certain amount of weapons, the minimum necessary for the Secret Service to feel comfortable.
An ironic concern in light of the fact that the man at the heart of this global event lived his life in a quest for peace. They watch over him in death as they did in life, the officers and men of the Swiss Guard, the Pope's bodyguards. But just who are these soldiers behind the colorful uniforms and the antique armor? Well, for a start, the Swiss Guards really do have to be Swiss. The recruits have to be 18 to 30 years old and at least 5'8". They are all experts in unarmed combat and trained with the most modern of weapons.
They are a functioning army for the Pope.
Papal expert Dan Callahan spoke to our Kim Dean.
It's like a crack unit in the Marines. It's the cream of the crop.
The Swiss Guard is actually getting ready to celebrate its 500th anniversary next year. 5 centuries of mostly illustrious service to the Pope. But the Guard's reputation was tarnished somewhat by an event that happened just several years ago. This man, Guard Commander Alwa Esterman, was shot dead in 1998, along with his wife, by a corporal who later killed himself. Esterman, shown here in plainclothes duty, was killed because he did not give the corporal a medal. That's according to the Vatican. The event was devastating for the men who guard their honor almost as zealously as they guard the Pope.
Maybe the only way to understand it is to be here. And if you don't believe in miracles, consider this.
Hi, I'm Deborah Norville from Inside Edition.
One of the first people I spoke to on the long, slow line to pay final respects to Pope John Paul II happened to have been on the same flight I took to Rome. His name is Candido Barroso, and he managed to crystallize this experience in just a few words.
This is a lesson in humanity.
This man understood the humanity of the Pope as well as anyone. Philadelphia's Cardinal Justin Regali worked with the Pontiff for 16 years here in Rome, and I just had to ask him, how would John Paul II feel about those huge crowds outside the Basilica?
He had great popularity, but that wasn't his purpose. It wasn't to attract attention to himself, but rather to his message.
Small wonder then that so many stand and wait. Now and then someone faints, but mostly people hold up well and even have the spirit and energy to build impromptu shrines like this one. Why are they here? There are 5 million ways to answer that question. Here's what Alana Swords of New York had to say.
I saw him back in 1995 when he came to New York, and he's had such an influence on me, so I had to come.
The Pope will never be forgotten, but he will be succeeded by another man, and everyone waits with bated breath to see who it will be.
He will be concerned with everything, with all issues of human life and human dignity, of people's spirituality.
I think it's going to be a huge challenge to find someone that can fill the shoes of Pope John Paul II.
Teddy Kennedy sat front and center on his father's lap in this photograph of America's royal family. He was the baby of the clan, a child pampered by his big sisters.
Together we can build the future of Massachusetts.
He served in the Senate for 47 years, the third longest tenure ever, and became known as the Lion of the Senate. But he also endured tragedies and scandals like no other figure in American history. He was by Jackie's side as they escorted the assassinated President Kennedy's casket in 1963. 5 years later, he broke down as he delivered the eulogy at his brother Bobby's funeral.
To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it.
It seemed inevitable that Ted would pick up the torch and run for president. Then came Chappaquiddick. The passenger in his car, 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne, drowned. Kennedy went on live TV and tried to explain his behavior.
There is no truth whatever, to the widely circulated suspicions of immoral conduct that have been leveled at my behavior.
Chappaquiddick haunted him. As time passed, he sought to redeem himself. He lost the Democratic nomination to President Jimmy Carter in 1980, but went down swinging.
The cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dream shall never die.
The tragedies continued to mount. He divorced first wife Joan, and it was revealed that she had become an alcoholic. Kennedy had his own drinking problems. He hit bottom in 1991 when he testified at the rape trial of his nephew, William Kennedy Smith.
Did you hear any screams?
No, I did not.
In a remarkable speech that same year, Kennedy confessed that he alone was responsible for his personal problems.
I realize that I alone am responsible for them, and I am the one who must confront them.
But tragedy always seemed to be shadowing him. In 1999, he buried his nephew, John F. Kennedy Jr., who died in a plane crash off Martha's Vineyard. He spoke about it emotionally on 60 Minutes.
I remember the Friday night, night actually that he was lost, and we gathered at Ethel's house. I think we better walk along. Barack Obama!
He passed the Kennedy legacy to a new generation in 2008 when he endorsed Barack Obama for president and became the embodiment of a profile in courage in his final days as he battled the brain tumor that would kill him.
For his family, he was a guardian. For America, he was a defender of a dream.
President Obama pays a somber tribute to Ted Kennedy just hours after the 77-year-old American icon lost his battle with brain cancer.
The First family was just beginning their week-long vacation here on Martha's Vineyard, which is just a short trip across the Nantucket Sound.
Kennedy died at the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport shortly before midnight. His 3 children, 2 stepchildren, and wife Vicky by his side. A priest was also with him. Matt Mahar is in Hyannisport.
We're getting new information about how Senator Kennedy spent the last hours of his life. According to a family priest summoned to the Kennedy compound late last night, the senator was surrounded by family and told him he was ready to die. The priest adds that Kennedy was going in and out of consciousness but understood most of what the family was saying.
The truth is, he had expressed to his family that he did want to go to heaven. There was a certain amount of peace.
His funeral will take place Saturday at Boston's Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church.
This is a CBS News special report. An American icon of politics is dead.
Networks broke into late-night programming to announce the death. His death brings to a close a courageous 15-month-long battle. He was released from the hospital in May last year, facing the grim diagnosis of inoperable brain cancer. You can see the white bandage covering his skull. He was determined to speak at the Democratic National Convention, knowing it would likely be his last.
The hope rises again, and the dream lives on.
He lived long enough to see Obama inaugurated president, but moments after greeting the new president at the inauguration lunch, he suffered a seizure and was rushed to the hospital.
Right now, a part of me is with him.
Kennedy spent his final months monitoring the national debate on health care and putting the finishing touches on his memoir, True Compass, out next month. His sister Eunice died 2 weeks ago, and he did not attend her funeral. It was a sure sign his final days had come. The Kennedy clan was out in force Friday, warmly greeting the tens of thousands bidding a final farewell to Senator Ted Kennedy. A teary-eyed Vicky Kennedy was clearly moved by the outpouring of love for her late husband, warmly hugging mourners on the viewing line.
It means so much to all of us. Thank you for being here.
Ted Kennedy's widow impressed everyone with her poise and grace, stepping outside the JFK Library to personally welcome the thousands who showed up.
Our whole family is deeply grateful for this outpouring of love, and that's why I wanted personally to come and just to thank as many people as I could.
Ted's grieving daughter, Kara, with her 2 children, also chatted with regular folks waiting to pay their respects, and his son Patrick, a member of Congress, shook hands. And Jean Kennedy Smith, Ted's sister, and now the sole survivor of Camelot, smiled, speaking with visitors passing by the flag-draped casket. At her side, her son, William Kennedy Smith. The family added extra viewing hours to accommodate the tremendous crowds.
My husband and I live in New Hampshire, and we got up at about 2 and drove down here, and just because we felt it was important to be here.
Among the throngs, Jesse Jackson and Senator John Kerry, and Kennedy after Kennedy poignantly kneeled down in front of the casket, paying their final respects to the late family patriarch. Armat Mahar is at the JFK Library.
President Obama is cutting his vacation on Martha's Vineyard short and flying to Boston early. He's concerned that Tropical Storm Danny could cause travel delays, and he doesn't want to miss giving the eulogy for his mentor and friend.
The farewell to Kennedy is filled with pomp and ceremony. An honor guard stands by protecting the casket, switching shifts with military precision. Through the day and night, the Kennedys, with close friends, including famed historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, took turns keeping vigil over the casket, sitting solemnly in front, never leaving Ted alone for a moment.
They set it up so that 4 people sit there, and then when the hour is over, they tap you on the shoulder and another 4 take your place. But watching the faces those people come through, some of them saluting him, some bowing their Red Sox caps, you felt that they knew this man.
A fitting final tribute to the Lion of the Senate.